Finesse fishing is a huge part of catching bass in these tournaments these days. You know, there's tournaments won on spinning rods all the time now. You know, with these fish getting all the pressure, fishing offshore again with the live scope, all the different things that you do, downsizing your line is real important. And I, again, am very, very excited about the P-Line fluorocarbon leader. This is the Spin-X. This is specifically made for finesse fishing. Right here are three of my favorite sizes. I have the 5, the 7, and the 9. And here's what I love about this line here. This line is a thinner diameter, 100% fluorocarbon, Japanese made, but it's a thinner for the pound test. And also I like the off sizes. I like the 7 versus say 8. I like the 9, say versus 10. I like the 5 versus 6. So this 7 to me is really, really strong. I have had zero issues fighting big fish on 7. I use 9 a lot when I'm skipping wacky worms under the docks, different things like that. But I want to talk about some of the 3 techniques that I've caught some of my biggest bass the last couple of years using this line. First, I'm going to give you a really good one right out of the gate. You know, we're up here in the north catching big smallmouth right now, and a way to catch giant smallmouth is this little dude right here. And for all of y'all that don't know what that is, you're looking at that going, what is that fuzzy little thing? This is what we call a hair jig. 1/16 size hair jig. Now, here's the tip. When you're fishing a hair jig, you want to fish a really small one like this, a 1/16, a 3/32, small like that, not an 1/8 ounce, not a 1/4 ounce. This thing right here just hovers through the water column super slow. It's lightweight, so you have to throw it far. My setup here is pretty simple. This is the 10-pound P-Line High Vis Green matched up with 7-pound P-Line Spin-X fluorocarbon leader. I can throw this thing really far, and it's super lightweight line. Now, here's why 7 is important, and I've done this technique a bunch. You say to yourself, well, 9 must be fine. You can get bites on 9. You're definitely gonna get more bites on 7. There's just something about this little hair jig coming through the water with 7-pound line when those smallmouth, you'll see them come up behind your bait and actually grab onto this thing, and they bite it so much more frequently with 7 on than 9. And if you went to say 10 or 12, you might not even get a bite. That's how finessey this technique is, and that's why this 7-pound Spin-X fluorocarbon leader is my go-to. Now, another little tip that I do with my hair jig, just to give it a little extra weight to cast, but it's pretty much a neutral buoyancy, is I put a little piece of a finesse worm on the back of this thing. A lot of times I'll match it up black. This is a little green pumpkin, little goby color on the back of this with that chartreuse. It matches up well. But that little bit piece of worm, about 1.5 inches long, adds that little bit of extra weight. So when you make that long cast, it actually carries a lot better. And it adds a little bit more bulk to this, and it gets a lot of bites. The other thing is the right size rod. With this technique here, you're going to want a longer rod. This is a 7/4 medium action rod. And again, you want a really nice spinning reel. This is a 6-3-1 Lew's. This spinning reel here I like because it's a high-speed reel, and when I get that bite, you feel that little, you're reeling this thing real slow by the way, and it's just hovering through the water column. You're not letting it sink. You don't let it, it's like you think jig, you think bottom. No, through the water column, reeling it real slow through the water column, and those fish will come up behind this thing and just inhale it. You'll feel that little tick, or you'll feel everything get heavy, and when that happens, just take off reeling. Don't set the hook, just reel like crazy and lift your rod up, and a lot of times you'll catch those big fish like that. And when I say big ones, I'm talking 5- and 6-pound smallmouth. Love this technique right here. Now, speaking of another technique for catching spotted bass, we just got back from Smith Lake a couple tournaments ago, and this was my go-to at Smith Lake. This is what we call minnow fishing right here. This is a little jig head minnow, small 3-inch shad style bait, 1/8 ounce head, little jig head. Similar setup as far as the 10-pound high vis braid, 9-pound fluorocarbon leader. This is a Spin-X 9-pound. I like the 9 for my spotted bass. Those lakes, Smith Lake, some of those lakes are, they're clear, but you don't have to go to 7. You will get a few more bites, but you don't have to go to 7. This right here technique is great. Now here's what I like to do with this thing. Again, rig it up with a little small, kind of match the hatch type thing, between a 3 to say a 5-inch shad style bait, and you're gonna want to play around. Here's the tip. You're gonna wanna play around with the fall rate. Now, if these fish, if you're finding them on your graph, say hovering around 20 feet under the water, an 1/8 ounce is going to be too light. You're going to want to go to, say, a 3/16 or a quarter. Or if the wind's blowing. If it's dead calm, you can get away with a little lighter, but the more the wind blows, you got to offset that wind with a little bit more weight. So if it was a dead slick calm day and I was throwing a 1/4 ounce and getting bit, the next day it's really windy, I might have to go to a 3/8 to catch those same fish. It just offsets that wind a little bit, that line getting blown around. But again, having small braid like this, smaller diameter line, it falls through the water very easily and gets down to those fish and you'll catch them. Basically what I do when I see a fish is I'll throw this minnow out, throw it, try to get it right above them and let it sink down naturally to right above their head. Don't let it sink below them. That's the tip on this, is once that minnow gets down, that fish is sitting here like this, you want to stop it right about here. You want the fish to react and start to come up. When that fish starts to react and come up, a lot of times I'll hold it there still, or I'll slowly pull it away like it's trying to get away. Not fast, but just slowly lift my rod, and that'll make that fish kind of chase it and lunge at it, and a lot of times they'll bite it in those big spots. Love that technique right there. But again, that's my go-to there with 9-pound fluorocarbon leader on that one. Now, this right here is a technique that I use for everything. Big largemouth, big spots, and of course big smallmouth. A drop shot. This tip here with the drop shot is twofold. One, it's about fall rate with your weight, similar to with the minnow, except you're not going to hold this bait above their head. You're going to let this sink to the bottom. But you want to have that fall rate to the right fall, because when they start to chase it, if it's going too fast, they lose interest. If it's going too slow, sometimes they get too good of a look. So you want that falling down. You got to play around with it a little bit. You want to play around with the size. A lot of times I'll start with, say, a 5/16 weight. And again, if it's real windy or if I'm fishing 20 foot or more, I'll go to the 3/8. 20 foot or less, the 5/16 works really well. 20 foot or more, 20 to 25, the 3/8. 25 and beyond is more of a 1/2 ounce size. So you're going to want to dictate the size of this weight, your drop shot weight, to how deep you're fishing, and again the fall rate, and again factor in if there's winds blowing or not blowing. Those do make a difference. Little tiny hook here. Basically I'm just rigging this thing up and putting a little number 2 on there, and this is a small little swim bait right here. This technique right here catches big largemouth, big spots, and some giant smallmouth. Here on the St. Lawrence, caught some 5 and 6 pound smallmouth on this setup right here. And what I like on this is I'll run anywhere between 7 and 9 pound fluorocarbon leader. I don't go with 5 too much on this technique, because a lot of times you're dragging this over rocks and stuff close to the bottom. And if you run 5, you run a risk of getting a little nick in your line and it may be failing. But 7 to 9 works really well. What I say not to do is don't go heavy. Don't go 12 or 14 pound leader. You just won't get the bites. This line right here holds up really, really well with this setup. I like a 7.2 to a 7.4 rod with this technique. Medium to medium heavy, depending on how big the fish are and what I'm looking for. Here on the St. Lawrence, I go to a medium and sometimes even a medium heavy if I go to a heavier weight deep water. Making long cast, 25, 35 foot of water, 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce weight, I'll go to a medium heavy just because I get a little bit longer cast, a little bit more stretch. That little bit extra strength in that rod will help drive that hook. And again, this small little hook right here will pin them right in the top of the jaw every single time. All 3 of these setups, again, have the high-vis 10-pound braid and just various sizes of line, depending, again, on those little tips that I'm talking about. So if you try these 3 techniques with this line right here, guys, you are going to be in the best-case scenario to catch some big fish. This is the proper way of doing it. You'll put yourself in the best position to get the most bites and have a lot of fun. So check out the P-Line Fluorocarbon Spin-X leader at a retailer near you, or click the website, check them out, and order it online at pline.com. Appreciate all the support, guys, and we'll see you.